Welcome and thank you for joining us today for Network as a Service, Understanding the Cloud Consumption Model in Networking. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, Vice President of Research covering Network Management at EMA. Shamus has nearly 2 decades of experience in the IT industry. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks, including network automation, AIOps-driven network operations, multi-cloud networking, and WAN transformation. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted the audience to know that Shamus will be wrapping up his presentation today by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand playback, as well as additional information about this new research. So I hope you'll check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus?
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Raleigh mentioned, today's topic is Network as a Service, NaaS, NaaS. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't think anyone has agreed on that yet. But yeah, so today's research is markets research study into understanding the cloud consumption model in networking. It's sponsored by Juniper Networks and Nile, names that will probably be familiar to most of the people on this webinar. Nile specializes in network as a service. Juniper is a network infrastructure company that offers network as a service as a consumption model for customers that are interested in it. So their financial support made this independent research possible. So I wanted to just acknowledge them and thank them and show you their logos. So research goals and methodology. What on earth is networking as a service or network as a service or NaaS, NaaS? I have never been able to get a straight answer. Well, no, I get lots of straight answers, and that's the problem. They're all different answers. No one really agrees on what NaaS is. These are just some screen caps of definitions that I took from the first page of search results on the internet for what is NaaS. So you see people talk about it's a bundling of hardware and software of an enterprise network into a single product, makes it available on a subscription basis. That's pretty simple. Doesn't really tell you like what kind of network we're talking about. It's a cloud service model where customers rent networking services from a cloud vendor. So I guess they're talking about AWS or Azure, like selling you something, some kind of, routing as a service maybe, or NAT, I don't know. It's a business model for delivering enterprise WAN services virtually on a subscription basis. I guess that means MPLS or internet connectivity. It's a cloud-based service that provides businesses with on-demand access to network resources and services. Instead of owning and maintaining a physical network hardware, you can subscribe to those capabilities via the internet. So I don't see a lot of agreement on what NaaS is, and sometimes you look at a NaaS vendor's website and you're maybe not sure what you're buying. There's not a hard and fast definition. I think that what you're going to see is people will start defining things in the context of what they're trying to offer, and it might start to fragment a bit into different capabilities, different types of networks. But right now, I think that the industry needs to sort of get rigorous about defining what NaaS is when they're talking about it, so that buyers know what to expect. And that's the research goal here, is to understand the buyer's perspective on what NaaS is, what they expect from it, what kind of benefits they will get if they adopt it, and what sort of barriers are in place to prevent them from getting value out of it. So to answer those questions, I surveyed 250 enterprise stakeholders across North America and Europe. That's the United States, Canada, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. Companies of all sizes, from as small as 250 people up to 10,000 or more, mostly technical personnel or managers of technical personnel, although we do have some finance executives and managers from departments like accounting and finance and purchasing But mostly it's IT personnel, cybersecurity, information security personnel, all the way from the CIO down to engineering. And a lot of different industries were captured in the survey, but the big ones are listed in the right of this slide. It's a lot of finance, insurance, manufacturing, construction, retail, a little bit of transportation and healthcare. So let's define NaaS. We asked these 250 people, what aspects of your networking do you associate with the term networking as a service? And you see multi-cloud, hybrid cloud networking, or WAN interconnectivity or peering, which I just bunched together into one category, was 3 out of 4 of them immediately associated with that. And then you see also WAN overlay technologies like software-defined WAN, secure access service edge, aka SASE. Most of them thought of that. They also thought of WAN connectivity services like APLS or internet, probably because their MPLS providers have started talking about NaaS as a way of letting them know that they've gotten less painful to work with by adopting some software-defined approaches to provisioning and managing their MPLS services. And then not as common, but still pretty popular. Some people think it's a outsourced data center networking, and more than 1 in 4 think it can refer to office or campus networks like switching and Wi-Fi. So as you can see, when you say I'm offering a network as a service solution, you need to go a little deeper than that, because it could mean a lot of different things. Also, we asked them, what kinds of characteristics or capabilities do you expect will be part of a NaaS offering? And at the top of the list is integrated managed security services. So it's not just about connectivity, it's about security in from a lot of their perspectives. They also expect a cloud-like service delivery model, which I think is like the one part of network as a service that everyone agrees on. It is a cloud-like service delivery model, because after all, it's a term that's kind of borrowed from more established terminology such as infrastructure as a service, or software as a service, or storage as a service, or like when you hear those terms, you know exactly what people are talking about. Software as a service is software delivered as a service via the cloud, right? Infrastructure as a service is compute resources primarily, maybe storage and some ancillary services around networking and stuff delivered by companies that everyone knows, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. But when you think network as a service, you go to the previous slide and they're like, well, it could mean this, it could mean that. But cloud-like service delivery definitely applies to everything that we're talking about in this context. They also think it means comprehensive operational dashboards and reporting on services. They want observability into whatever they're outsourcing to a NaaS provider. And they think it's going to come with APIs and integrations with other IT systems and services. Like, it has to integrate with my IT service management solutions, like help desk, end user support. Like, I need to be able to integrate with that. I need to integrate my security monitoring, my NDR platform, so that I can pull telemetry from the NaaS components and integrate into a broader performance management, security posture type of solution. They want integrations. And then secondarily, or more tertiary, I guess, because the APIs and the observability are kind of secondary to the top two, you see a lot of them are thinking about industry-specific solutions, like, oh, I want a NaaS solution that's geared towards my industry, which is healthcare or banking. They're also, well, everything is AI these days. And so a lot of them are thinking that it should have like integrated AI or automation capabilities, and zero trust, network segmentation, and access control. So what you see at the bottom is like, they're not really thinking about per feature capability consumption, because their existing networking vendors are already foisting that upon them. They don't like it. They aren't really thinking about outsourced day two operations like monitoring, troubleshooting, change management. They don't want to necessarily outsource that completely, which we'll see in a future slide here. And they're not really thinking about how it's about free, no-cost hardware upgrades, although that is going to be the case for a lot of people who are adopting things like data center networking as a service or campus networking as a service, but they're really thinking about security, flexibility, observability, and integrating into their overall IT operation. So based on that, I think that we have to have a flexible definition that is capable of getting into specifics. So it's about paradigms versus connectivity types. You need to talk about the paradigm. You also have to talk about the connectivity type and be specific when you're talking to customers and when customers are talking to potential providers. So my demand-driven definition for networking as a service based on the data that I saw in this research is it's a networking solution delivered via cloud consumption model, which everyone I think already agrees on, with integrated security services, comprehensive observability, and robust integration into existing digital infrastructure. That is what people told us they expect, and so that's the definition I am coming up with. And also, NaaS providers need to specify in messaging, in their websites, in their sales collateral, in their presentations to the industry, what kinds of networks they offer. The current perception is it's about WAN and cloud interconnects. It's about WAN services, and it's about overlays on the WAN through SD-WAN and SASE. It is less common that they think of, but I think it will increase in the future as they become more aware of offerings that they'll start thinking about data center networking and campus or branch LAN. All of these are viable NaaS concepts or viable NaaS options. And depending on the type of business you are, you might find one or more of these interesting and one or more of these not interesting. And it's really going to be up to you to determine what you want. But what I think really needs to happen is that people need to sort of be specific about what they're talking about when they say NaaS. So how should you consume it if you decide that that's what is for you? Well, look for this. People told us that they want to bundle a network as a service with additional managed services. Specifically, well, it's very security and control oriented here. These are the top 4 of the responses. Network security, so that they expect things like firewalls, intrusion prevention, stuff like that to be integrated into a NaaS offering. Security monitoring, so they want some sort of NDR or SIM on top of it that maybe they share with the provider so that they see a complete picture of their security posture, can detect attacks and breaches. And they want integrated or bundled VPN or Zero Trust network access to deal with secure remote access into their network, and also identity access, identity and access management. And incidentally, increasingly, the bottom 2 on this list, people are interested in trying to integrate those into a universal access solution. And so it makes sense that they'd both be there. And then they also want something that's customizable. Like the perception is that NaaS is a cookie cutter thing that is meant to be one size fits all, and every business is its own snowflake. So they're going to want some customization capabilities around different things like scalability options, for instance, like, you only offer 1 gig connections at my remote sites that I want to connect into your WAN offering. Well, I have like 40 sites that need to be 100 gig because I'm not over provisioning all these sites. I'd like something more attuned to what I need. Oh, you want to, you have like all, well, it could also be, like they are encountering providers want to over provision their wireless network and they don't want to do that. They're encountering providers that want to over provision their data center network and they want something more fine-tuned to maximize cost efficiency. So they want scalability options. They also want customizable security policies because every every industry has very specific security requirements. Increasingly industries are being targeted because they're in a particular industry. Companies are seeing like very industry specific attacks. So security policies that are customizable will be very important to them. They want flexibility about billing and licensing. So how they consume the stuff, how they pay the provider for it they want customization around that. And we'll see that in a bit more detail about that. And they want also customization of network topology and SLAs, especially SLAs, because usually if you're going to consume a network as a service offering, you're going to need to integrate it into your overall operation. And you want to make sure that that SLA is designed to meet expectations of the business that you've set as a network operations or network manager already, right? So that SLA is going to be aligned with that as much as possible. So you need to customize that. So how do you want to pay for it? We talked about flexibility in billing and licensing, and here you see what's underpinning that. When we ask them how they want to pay for stuff, like the first thing they say is total number of network devices installed or interfaces enabled. And that's a little bit of a legacy of the sort of CapEx centric world where they're paying per device, right? So they're like, well, we'd like to be able to rent network switches by device. I think you might see that go down a little bit as other opportunities prove themselves out as better options. For instance, service level agreement data. Hey, you missed your SLA last week. We want to discount our charge. Like you didn't meet our expectations. We're paying you less. Some option in there for that. Total number of apps supported. So that might apply, for instance, to a data center network as a service. Like how many applications are going to be supported on this data center network that you're consuming as a service, or cloud network that you're consuming as a service. Aggregate bandwidth provided, like total bandwidth offered by the solution, whether that's like a WAN network or a campus network, that's something that they're thinking of. And then per connected user endpoint. Less interest, bottom of the list, per feature capability, that's something they're already being nickel and dimed by mainstream switching vendors to some extent, as switching vendors start to convert more and more of their CapEx business model to recurring revenue by doing a lot of different like subscription tiers on top of hardware. So they're already done with that, and they don't think that's a high priority for their NaaS purchasing. And then site or square footage of buildings is kind of it's definitely a low priority here. I mean, it might be a higher priority if you're like focused on something like a campus network, obviously. That might be their ideal approach to it. But then also like how many people you got in that square footage, right? Like, and how often is it full? You really might want to sort of pair that with something else like total apps supported or number of people connecting, to make sure that you're not overpaying for the network that you've rented basically from your provider. And then as you're getting NaaS into place, you're going to really want to think about integrating NaaS into operations. Now, we asked people, if you were to outsource some aspect of your network to a NaaS provider, how do you want to handle day two operations like monitoring, troubleshooting, change management? Do you want to outsource that? Do you want to keep it in-house, or do you want to share it with the NaaS provider? And as you see here, only 11% told us that they want to outsource network operations to that NaaS provider 100%. Instead, 64% want a hybrid or shared operating model. And most of the people who want that, they told us that they achieve it, achieve observability of the NaaS environment with a combination of existing tools that they have in place that they're pointing at the NaaS environment and trying to pull data from it if they can, and combining that with the NaaS provider itself offering tooling and reporting into their environment. So they want a combination of those two things to get that hybrid operating model up and running. You see here on the right, network engineering manager to a large university who is a customer of a NaaS provider. He said, I want access to their observability right now. This is a guy I talked to one-on-one. Otherwise, I don't know what's going on. I open a ticket and I wait. I have a dean asking why wireless is down, and I don't have any update or anything to look at. So he wants his NaaS provider to open up observability. He's not getting enough of that right now. I think it's going to be something you'll see from a lot of NaaS providers in the future. So benefits and roadblocks around NaaS. We asked people what would prevent you from adopting a NaaS solution. The number one response was higher total cost of ownership over time. You see this, that network engineering manager at a large university that I talked to, he says the switch from CapEx to OpEx piles up over time. Predictable costs are nice, but over time it's higher. So he's thinking about that. And 38% of his peers in this survey agree. Number two, lack of visibility into service quality. This was discussed on the previous slide. You need hybrid operating models for NaaS, basically, what I'm seeing in the research. And so they are worried about losing that visibility. And then there's security concerns. Oh, well, we're opening up our network to a third party. They're pulling data from it to support monitoring, troubleshooting, security, things like that. We're not comfortable with that. And you see this quote at the bottom from a network engineer at a Fortune 500 aerospace and defense company who hits the nail on the head by saying, we're in the defense industry, so there's a lack of trust by default. We're not going to trust you with any sort of data off premises. And then related to that, regulatory compliance issues, like a bank might be worried about outsourcing something. They're just starting to feel comfortable with cloud infrastructure as a service, let alone being comfortable with network as a service. And then fear of losing control over change management. They don't want to have the NaaS provider just making changes without giving them full visibility into them and knowing when they're happening and why. So they don't have any sort of unexpected changes that screw up the business because the NaaS provider isn't fully integrated into IT operations as an external entity and doesn't understand how a certain change might hurt the business or hurt the network as a whole from end to end. On the flip side, we've talked about the roadblocks. What about the benefits? Like, why do people want to do this? Why do they want to consume some aspect of their network as a service? And the first one is quick access to new technology, like a new Wi-Fi standard, new Ethernet standard. Maybe, we've watched SD-WAN evolve from SASE. Maybe SASE is going to evolve into something else in 3 years, and you want to be able to evolve with it. Things like that. And so they think that if they're not sweating hardware assets for 6 years, they can, because they're consuming it as a service, they can have something in their agreement with their provider to, when the time comes, go from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7 without having to incur too much additional cost. Because there's a lower upfront commitment that's easier for you to do that in a NaaS setting, for instance. Mitigation of skills gaps and headcount shortfalls in the network team. I see my research over and over again over the last few years that it's just really hard to hire people with network engineering skills. And actually, we're going to cover that in a second in a dedicated slide. Improved predictable performance SLAs. If you get your SLAs right when you're talking to a NaaS provider at the beginning, you're going to hopefully see better performance, and you'll have someone to hold accountable for it if things don't go as planned, and you'll get compensated for your pain. And then aligning network capacity and services with fluctuating demand and requirements. So let's say you're an accounting company and tax season rolls around and your network is hit hard. If you're using NaaS in certain parts of it, you can sort of right-size capacity with that growth in demand and also the clawback of demand when tax season ends. Same thing with retail and shopping seasons for Christmas and holidays and whatnot. If you're a defense contractor and someone goes to war, you're suddenly going to have to ramp up certain things in terms of capacity. And then we saw security risk as a inhibitor of NaaS adoption. We also see it as a potential benefit here. It's a secondary one. But if you're able to add additional layers of security onto your overall network by having integrated managed security services from your NaaS provider or improve network security from your NaaS provider, you're going to benefit from that in terms of reduced security risk and then reduced operational overhead. You've outsourced management. There's less, maybe you can speed up response times. Maybe you can allow your existing personnel to spend time on other projects. The less important benefits are reduced CapEx costs. The shift from CapEx to OpEx isn't everything is shaping up to be. It's actually the flexibility and the speed of access to new technology and helping the business through mitigating skills gaps. That's the real opportunity. It's also not about pain-free implementation, although that theoretically is an option here, and a flexible network operating models. Those are not the big ones, but they are real benefits if those things are important to you. So NaaS is a network engineering force multiplier. I mentioned people are struggling with hiring and retaining network engineers in the IT industry today. In this survey, we asked them, like, do you have enough networking talent to support your IT organization, your business? Only 32% said that we have enough networking talent to support any task or project that comes our way. Most of them are really focusing on, just they're identifying high priority projects, and there's a lot of things that are being left undone. They're too busy troubleshooting issues day to day, or trying to deal with like a merger and acquisition, whatever. And the skills gaps that they're dealing with are here on the left. Network security is the big one. A lot of them are also just struggling to find people that know how to monitor and troubleshoot a network, to deal with cloud networks, and to automate networks. We don't have enough people that know Python. We don't have enough people that know the open source tools that we prefer for network automation, or we don't have enough people to buy something off the shelf and make it work for us. We also asked them, if you were to outsource a significant amount of network operations to a NaaS provider, like, how would you apply the time that you free up among your networking personnel? And you see at the very bottom, only 28% told us that they would reduce their network headcount to some extent. This is a multiple choice option, by the way. Some of them may have selected that in one of the ones at the top here. But what you see is most people are really anticipating that if they were to outsource to a NaaS provider, they would apply their network engineering teams to strategic things, such as, number one, enabling end user experience optimization. Number two, AI. Everyone's talking about AI, like enterprise AI, using AI to create new businesses, new services, transform operations. And 46% said that's something our network team needs to be involved in, and we will leverage that if we were to use NaaS to free them up. And then enabling cloud transformation, which is a huge strategic provider for network operations in general these days, based on my ongoing research. And then also enabling automation. We all talked about it on the left, how people are lacking enough network automation experts. And if you could free up the experts you do have, they're going to point them at an automation project. So final thoughts. Network as a service offerings are as diverse as networking in general. There are lots of different types of networks, and they're all meant to fit together into like an end-to-end piece of digital infrastructure that supports your business. And when people are talking about NaaS, they're talking about many different parts of it. They might be talking about all parts of it if they're able to address them all. But it's important to know what they're talking about, and to think about how whatever NaaS networking capability they want to sell you, it fits your current needs and priorities. Most respondents reported some interest in adopting all varieties of NaaS. It didn't show it on the charts, but we asked them, how interested are you in campus networking as a service, and data center networking as a service, as cloud interconnectivity as a service, et cetera? And across the board, the majority of them, a large majority of them, showed at least some interest, if not extreme interest, in all of them. That's not to say they're all adopting it, but they see the opportunity or the potential benefit if it works for them. Security risk is a concern. Specific industries especially are going to be hesitant to outsource aspects of networks to a NaaS provider for a variety of reasons that I've kind of touched on. But also, it is a major expectation that security services are going to be bundled with any sort of nice NaaS solution. And also, they expect that NaaS is going to give them rapid access to cutting edge technology. It's going to help them close their skills gaps, and it's going to improve overall network performance by holding NaaS providers to their SLAs. So those are the key takeaways. Now, the report itself, it published last week. It's like 55, 60 pages. It has a lot more data, a lot more analysis, and a lot more quotes from interviews with one-on-one interviews I did. So if you want to check it out, there's a link here. And now I'll hand it over to Raleigh to start off questions and answers.
Thanks, Shamus. I will be sending out a follow-up email that will include the on-demand playback as well as a link to learn more about the new research report. You can also check out the sponsor sites. One or both of them may have the report on their site as well. So jumping into the questions, Shamus, the first one is, don't most of the NaaS vendors provide a precise definition of their service as part of the contracting process? What are you seeing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they have to. They've got no choice because if they leave it ambiguous, that's going to be painful for everyone involved. But I was more talking about the fact that, like, when you're going out there to try to research stuff and figure out what you want to do and what's possible, it's hard to get a good understanding of that. Like, if you've gotten to the point where you're engaging with a vendor, and like in you're setting up you're negotiating a contract, like you know what they offer probably. Hopefully, if you don't, then you haven't done your job. But I'm talking about like marketing, industry leadership, like just like making sure that the industry is like having a conversation that everyone can understand, so that buyers know what to look for and what to expect and where to get it. And I think it's a little fuzzy right now because there are a lot of voices that are in conflict with each other. They're not necessarily trying to shove each other aside and like silence people who are like offering something different, but like there's just a lot of different voices talking at once, and that can be hard to sort through. And I think, like, I just think that definitions are going to get more precise over time, so that's easier, like, for people to understand, like, oh, what the difference is between, for instance, in a different part of the world or industry, like platform as a service versus infrastructure as a service, or you know, disaster recovery as a service, like very specific service offerings. It's all just got to become more precise so that people can have conversations, for instance, with their CIO. Like, you're a network engineer, you're like, I need to get this, I need to use this NaaS provider. And then you go to your CIO, and the CIO is like, wait. You want to do this to our campus network? I thought that NaaS was a cloud interconnect as a service. What's a campus network as a service? I don't know. Why are we doing this? Like that, then you got to explain to them like the different like definitions that people have. Why should you even have that conversation? Like, it should be easier from the get-go to understand all this.
Thanks, Shamus. Do you have any recommendations for integrating a NaaS provider into my overall approach to network operations?
Yes. Make sure that your NaaS provider can offer good visibility into the environment they're managing so that you can understand issues, collaborate with them on resolutions, and set expectations for end users. Also, investigate whether you can point your own monitoring tools at a NaaS environment to extract telemetry from it. A lot of people, if they're consuming SD-WAN as a service, for instance, like their SD-WAN provider probably offers like a nice dashboard that shows them everything, but they also want to like send their tool to extract data from it. One thing that a lot of people do is they hit it with like a synthetic network monitoring tool that goes and crawls through the tunnels that the SD-WAN establishes over the WAN underlay, and sort of shows you current conditions as according to what the synthetic network traffic is revealing. So there's that as well. And then also when negotiating with a vendor, align customer support guarantees and SLAs from that NaaS provider with the expectations that your network operations team has already set for the business. So like if you have usually tried to resolve a connectivity issue within 3 hours, don't settle for a 24-hour resolution guarantee from a NaaS provider, because that is going to cause you a lot of pain in the future. You know, like your business stakeholders, your CIO is going to be like, this used to be fixed like within a few hours when it happened, and now it takes a whole day. Why? That's not gonna fly, you know? So there you go.
Thanks for those insights. Shamus, campus NaaS seems rare. Is that a viable solution for enterprises?
It really depends on the individual business. So campus NaaS is ideal for companies that have a shortage of switching and Wi-Fi engineering talent. Like I talked to a couple customers of campus NaaS who they just don't have like a robust IT organization, and this is great for them, right? So that's one piece of it. It's also good for companies that have like very straightforward requirements for basic connectivity in their campus or branch offices. Like for instance, like a big retail company that has like 500 stores or whatever, like they're gonna love campus NaaS for like branch office connectivity. Be like, oh yeah, my NaaS provider is providing my Wi-Fi in all these places, and I don't have to take service, don't have to deal with the tickets that come from them anymore. Thank you. And then as campus NaaS providers continue to mature, you'll see offerings from them that can offer value to enterprises that are more sophisticated in what they expect from their networks, especially like, you know, someone's like, I want zero trust campus segmentation or something, or zero trust access on my campus. Like you'll see NaaS providers start to be like, yes, we can do that. Or I need like really good location-based services on my Wi-Fi network, and can you do that? And you'll see a NaaS provider say, yes, we're partnering with these providers and sending them data from your Wi-Fi network to that, and it's going to be able to do this for you. And so you'll see that happen over time. And so I think like it will become more mainstream for enterprises that don't have network engineering teams that are differentiated in the campus environment. Like if you have like a really good Wi-Fi engineering team that really like sets you apart in terms of like end user experience and things like that and security, like you're going to stay away from campus NaaS. But if you have always found it kind of painful to keep your Wi-Fi network up and running, you might say, you know what, let's try this. I think it might work for us.
Great, thanks. Let's take one final question. It is, higher TCO over time is concerning. How do you mitigate this?
Okay, so if you're the type of company that tries to sweat network assets for 5 or 6 years, it's possible that you'll find it painful to switch to higher TC to a OpEx model. And you will say like, oh, geez, like over time, this stuff is a lot more expensive. But on the other hand, like traditional networking vendors are already pushing hard in that direction with recurring revenue. Like it is the stated objective of the leading network infrastructure vendor on the market by market share to convert as much of its business from CapEx to OpEx, to recurring software revenue. And one of the ways that they're doing it, and many of the competitors are doing it, is by selling you a piece of hardware with a perpetual license on it for very basic features. And then if you want, quote unquote, advanced features, you pay a annual subscription for it. And you are not going to see them pull back from that, despite the number of customers that complain about it. Because I hear from them, they complain about it, but it's not going to change because they need to Well, they need to make Wall Street happy. So there's already a shift towards TCO, even if you're staying with hardware. Also, how much does maintenance and support cost on your traditional network hardware? That's a recurring cost anyway that piles up over time. But on the other hand, NaaS often includes managed services, which allow you to apply internal resources elsewhere to maximize your talent. So you're going to probably reduce operational overhead if you do NaaS right. And so you're going to free up your personnel, which are FTE hours that you can include in a ROI calculation, for instance, to be like, hey, I've freed up $700,000 in annual network engineering costs from my IT team that I am now applying elsewhere. That is something that you should keep in mind. And the ability to swap in emerging technology like Wi-Fi 7 and beyond, and higher bandwidth switching and routing and more advanced SD-WAN platforms without having to worry about the life cycle of the existing assets you have in place is pretty compelling. Like, you have a network in place for 2 years, right? And you recognize a need for an upgrade to a next-gen platform. You don't have to wait another 2 or 3 years to do it in order to please your finance department. You have, hopefully, a contract in place with your NaaS provider that allows you to do that upgrade now. There'll probably be like additional costs for that upgrade. Like, they're gonna they might charge you an upfront fee to say, okay, you're going from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7. You know, it's gonna cost us to do it, so we're gonna offer you this this one-time fee, or maybe we're just gonna increase your monthly subscription. And then you have it. You have that new network without having to have gone through the entire IT hardware lifecycle investment lifecycle that your finance department is tracking, depreciation of hardware and all that stuff like that gets thrown out the window. So like, you get to evolve with the business more quickly if you do things right and if you negotiate things up front for it. But yeah, the truth is, like, you're seeing people recognize this in the infrastructure as a service world as well. Like, oh, you know what? Cloud computing is, has higher TCO over time. But you don't see them all suddenly clawing everything back, right? I think they're just trying to get smarter about what they send in the cloud and be more efficient in how they use the cloud, because they've recognized that it's not really about cost savings anymore. It never should have been. It's about flexibility, agility, and the ability to consume technology quickly and to expand capacity quickly. It's not about saving money necessarily, but you do need to be efficient and make sure that, yes, maybe your TCO gets higher over time, but like the payoff to the business is higher as well.
Thanks, Shamus, for all those great insights. And I wanted to thank our audience for taking time out of your schedule for joining us. Be on the lookout for that email from EMA, and I hope we'll see you at a future EMA research webinar. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.